Alrighty, solving an absolute value equation. I don't want to start with this one, I want to go back a bit. But an absolute value equation usually is going to have two solutions. Sometimes it will have one, sometimes it won't have any at all. If we look at this one here, this one's pretty easy just to solve just in our heads. You want to know the absolute value of x is equal to 4. Well, there's two different answers for this. It could be positive 4, x could be positive 4. X could also be negative 4. So there are two different solutions to this one. Because if I put 4 in, it's the absolute value of 4, and that is 4. And the absolute value of negative 4 is also 4. So that works there. That's in your book. These are the general steps. I'll explain them verbally. Our goal is that we want to try to get the absolute value part all by itself first. So you can think of it like that's, at least for the beginning, that's like your variable. When you're solving multi-step equations, you're trying to get the variable all by itself. Well, first I'm trying to get the absolute value all by itself. So we're always going to do opposite operations. I'm multiplying the absolute value by 4. So we need to do the opposite. We need to divide both sides by 4. So if I divide both sides by 4, we're going to have the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 6. So now, again, there's going to be, in this case also, there's going to be two different numbers that we can put in for x to make this a true statement. So we're going to set up two equations. Because inside here, inside the absolute value, this could be a 6 to make it true. The absolute value of 6 equals 6. And also the absolute value of negative 6 would also get us to equal 6. So I'm going to set these two equal to each other, and we're going to make two equations. So our first equation is when the inside equals 6. The other equation is when the inside equals negative 6. Because again, if the inside equals negative 6, we'd have the absolute value of negative 6, which is positive 6. So it works. Solve each one of these equations for x, and you're going to get your two answers. So here we get x is equal to 4, and here we get x is equal to negative 8. And again, we're always doing opposite operations. So you have two answers here. X is equal to 4, and x is equal to negative 8. We're adding 2, so we do the opposite. We subtract 2. You can always check to make sure that your answer works by substituting it back into the original equation. When x is 4, we put it in, so it's 4 plus 2 is 6. We take the absolute value of 6, which is 6, and 4 times 6 is 24. Same thing works with negative 8. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. 4 times 6 is 24. This one, the absolute value is already all by itself on one side of the equation. So we just go ahead and we start and we set up our two equations. It's x minus 3 is equal to positive 5, and x minus 3 is equal to negative 5. So again, opposite operations, I'm subtracting 3 from x, so I'm going to add 3 to x, or both sides. So you get x is equal to 8. And over here, you're going to get x is equal to negative 2. So you have our two answers. X is equal to 8 and x is equal to negative 2. This one, again, I need to get the absolute value part all by itself first. So by doing opposite operations, we're adding 4, so subtract 4. So you get the absolute value of x plus 3 is equal to 0. Now, if I were to set up my two equations, you would get x plus 3 is equal to 0. And you would also get x plus 3 is equal to negative 0. Well, 0 and negative 0 are the exact same thing. We don't need this one. These are not necessary. So we only actually need one when the absolute value is equal to 0. So subtract 3 from both sides. So you get x is equal to negative 3. And that's your only answer. This case, there's only one solution. X is equal to negative 3. One more. And this one, again, I need to get the absolute value part all by itself. So we're going to do that by doing opposite operations. First, we have to get the term with the absolute value all by itself. So to do that, we're going to subtract 11 from both sides. 5 minus 11 is negative 6. So then we have 2 times the absolute value of x minus 1. So we've gotten the term with the absolute value all by itself. And now since it's being multiplied by 2, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel, so you're just left with the absolute value of x minus 1. Over here it's equal to negative 3. Now here, notice with an absolute value, you're either going to get 0 or it's always going to be a positive number because it's the distance. The absolute value is measuring the distance to 0. So this could never be negative. I can never take the absolute value of a number and get a negative number. So negative 3 equals the absolute value. There's no solutions for this. I could never have an absolute value equal negative 3, or any negative number for that matter. So you have to be very careful that you don't go ahead and try to solve this problem and say, oh yeah, well then I set up my two equations, negative 3 equals x minus 1, and positive 3 equals x minus 1, and you get your two answers. Always check to make sure that they work, because if you aren't paying attention, you might accidentally say that you got two different answers, but they should not work. So in this one, there's no solutions. So that's how we solve absolute value equations.